everyone, it's Carol from Crinkled Path Journals, and I have an upcoming journal where I need some eco-dyed paper. So I thought I would try and keep this video to 30 minutes and teach you how to eco-dye paper yourself. The supplies you'll need are alum, or potassium aluminum sulfate, which you can buy on Amazon, or you can get it in the canning section. They sometimes sell it with pickling supplies, or if you think you're just going to try this once, get it in your baking aisle. You're only going to use about 1/6 to 1/4 cup for about a dozen papers. You'll need containers that you're going to use just for this that you will not use with food again later. I've got vinegar in that measuring cup, not alum, so that I'll be able to reuse with food. You'll need a large paintbrush. You'll need this vinegar, as I mentioned, some flowers and leaves. Paper, I used a variety. Copy paper, deli paper, watercolor paper, the cheap stuff, and some parchment, just stuff I had on hand. You'll need a roasting pan. The one I used was 11.5 by 15 and it's 3 inches deep. You'll need something that's larger than your paper, so keep that in mind, but you can buy one of those cheap aluminum pans. You'll need some rusty bits. I'll explain more about that later. You'll need some tiles to put in the bottom of your pan, or you can also use some small stones or a wire rack. Something that will keep your paper off the bottom of the pan when you're cooking your paper. You'll also need 2 pieces of cardboard to sandwich your paper and some binder clips to hold it all together. You can also use natural string if you want to tie your bundle together. The other thing you'll need is something to weight the paper down. You can use more tiles like I did, which you'll see later on in the video, or you can use a couple heavy rocks or a brick, anything that isn't going to be damaged by the solution. Even though it's pretty diluted, alum can still cause some skin irritation, so it's a good idea to wear a glove with the hand that you're handling the wet paper with, and it's also a good idea to have eye protection. This would not be fun to get splattered in your eye. We used a camping stove outside to boil this, and it did kind of oxidize down in the bottom of the stove where it bubbled over. Well, I don't know that you'd want to really do this on your stove at home in the kitchen unless you keep a very close eye on it so that it doesn't splatter or boil over. Maybe if you have a deeper pan than mine, you'll feel more secure about that. The last ingredient might seem obvious, but it's water. You're going to need water to mix with the alum to make your solution. You're going to need water at the end to rinse your pages, and so it might be convenient to work in a sink like I am here, especially on the removal process. Don't panic if you haven't been taking notes on the supplies. I'll have them in the description box below. Now let's talk about the process. You've been watching it happen before your eyes here. Pretty much, you're going to be using your alum solution, and you're going to be taking your paintbrush and you're going to paint at least one side of the paper. I do both sides with the heavier watercolor paper and with the parchment sometimes because you just want it to soak in and give an initial first layer in your paper before you put the plant matter on it. Next, lay your flowers and your leaves on the page in a pleasing arrangement. Keep in mind that for junk journal pages, we often fold them in half, and so I like to have things on both sides of the paper that has some kind of interest. As you can probably imagine, paper gets fragile when it gets wet, so use the brush lightly and apply a firm but gentle pressure between layers to kind of keep compacting the stack as you go. I can do math, but it's not my favorite. To figure out the alum solution, you're supposed to weigh your paper, and say like me, it weighed 125 grams. Then you take 10% of 125, which is 12.5 grams, and that's how much alum you need to use in your water solution. I calculated ahead of time about how much water the pan was going to hold. I figured that the paper was going to displace probably about half of that. Oh, it's a lot to think about. But I think if you do 12 pieces of paper in a pan that's just a little bit bigger than your paper, you can use my solution measurements, which was 4 cups of hot water, a 1/6 to a 1/4 cup of alum. Mix it up really good. Let it dissolve completely before you start putting it on your paper. And then you're going to dump whatever is left after painting into the pan. And then you're going to also add 1 cup of vinegar to the pan, and that will help the color to stay color fast or not fade on you. The alum itself is a mordant. It helps the color from the plants actually soak into the paper instead of just floating away out into the water. Isn't it magic? You'll also need a cup of vinegar and 3 cups of water for rinsing at the end. When you take the paper bundle apart, you're going to rinse each page with this vinegar water solution. For about 12 pages, I ended up making 2 batches of that 3-to-1 water vinegar ratio solution for rinsing. I was rinsing very sparingly over the paper, just enough to give it a nice coat of wetness, while my husband was unraveling the bundle, which you'll see a little further along in the video. But I just wanted to let you know about how much vinegar you're going to need. About 3 cups total. You've probably noticed I've put the name of the plants that I know in the subtitles or pop-up titles. I picked a lot of the plants from just around our property, in our orchard, and my flower beds. I don't know the names of all the leaves because we have birds that like to plant trees randomly on our property, and then I have to try and figure out what they are. But thanks, birds, we need more trees. I also picked leaves from the orchard, and honestly, by the time I got back to the house, I wasn't sure which was plum and which was apricot, or pear versus nectarine or peach. So, not sure all of those made it in, but if there's a leaf that I didn't label, it's because I wasn't sure. One of the trees with berries, I have labeled both the leaves and the berries as mystery, is one of the biggest trees on our property, and it is a bird planted tree, but I have no idea what it is, and I tried to look it up, use tree identifiers. It has very distinct leaves, it has very distinct berries, and I can figure it out. So if anybody out there knows what that tree is, let me know. I also used plants from a tropical get well bouquet that someone had sent me, and it was just really fun to use what I had on hand and experiment. I know you can find lists of leaves and flowers that print better than others, but I just encourage you to walk through your neighborhood or your local park and just get whatever you can that is right close at hand, and look around in your own yard, because that's what you're gonna most easily find if you do this ever again, and it's good to know what works well that's close to you. Hopefully there's not too many plants out there that create some kind of noxious fumes when you boil them in your kitchen, but it might be another good reason to use an outdoor stove for this. For those of you who've noticed, my right hand has made quite an appearance in this video. I'm getting some freedom to use it more, still working on my exercises and taking it slow and steady so that my shoulder continues to heal. Thank you to everyone who keeps sending me well wishes and prayers. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to be able to do some things again and hope to be back to journaling soon. Unfortunately, sitting at my table is probably the hardest place to have my arm, and so this was really nice because it was at arm's length when I was standing up, and so it wasn't putting a lot of stress on my shoulder. Okay, just about 1 more minute of the layering in our plant and alum lasagna. Then we'll be bundling, so stick around. All right, the top piece of cardboard goes on our sandwich. Then my hubby had to step in for the technical two-handed duties. He secured it all with these binder clips. And yes, I tried to get him to wear gloves. These are the rusty bits I was talking about. If you don't have some, make your own with vinegar. Hubby used some of these broken tiles, they're about a half an inch thick, to layer in the bottom of the pan to keep the paper from burning and getting too close to the bottom. He also then used several more to create weight on the top of the stack. Pressure helps the paper and the plants make good contact for printing. Now I'll add the alum mixture. First I'll dump in the rest that I didn't use up with the paintbrush, and then I'll add the second container for the second 2 cups. Now I'm adding that cup of vinegar that I had measured at the beginning. Now I'm turning on the tap and adding just a little bit more water until the paper is completely covered. Now you're going to set your pan on a stove, bring it to a boil, and once it's boiling, you're going to reduce the heat until you get it down to a simmer. Allow it to simmer for 1 hour. Check it often and add water if it gets low. Then turn the stove off for half an hour and let it cool. Once it's cool enough that you can handle it, dump out the water somewhere where it's not going to kill a plant or go down a drain. Store your bundle for 12 to 24 hours in a dimly lit, dry place. We put it in our garage. Once the 12 to 24 hours has passed, give your bundle a rinse with just plain cold water before you start handling it. Then, when you're unpacking the bundle, use that 3 cups of water to 1 cup of vinegar solution to sparsely rinse each page. Sorry, no, still couldn't get him to wear the gloves. Now, by the magic of editing, you're going to see the wet page and the finished page, front and back. I have to give one more shout out to my amazing hubby for going out of his way to make this such an enjoyable activity and help in the areas where I couldn't manage right now. I'm so impressed with how gently he handled this wet paper and didn't tear any of them. I hope you enjoy the results. I know I was very pleased with the way a lot of these came out, and I'm excited to use them in my next custom journal. I'll put some music on and we can sit back and look at the results together. As we were unstacking and rinsing, we were piling them on a cookie sheet, and then we carried them out and hung them over our clothesline for the night. I picked them up in the morning and ironed them. You get to watch my awkward left-handed ironing. Sorry. I thought you would like to see that you don't have to use anything special. I have my craft iron, I have a rag on my stovetop, and I'm just going at it with just the paper. It was still slightly damp. I have it set at about 3 on the heat setting, just past permanent press there. And I use the tip of the iron to really get in the mountains and valleys on some of these creases. You're not going to get rid of all the wrinkles. It's part of the character of the paper, but you can get it pretty flat. Here's one more close-up look of these gorgeous papers just waiting to go home to their new junk journal. I have another nature dyeing video I'd like to do, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you've enjoyed this video, I bet you'll love that next one. I appreciate your subscribing and being here on the channel, and I really love your comments. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.